Alrighty, in this video I'm going to show how modders can build their own outposts using the Skyrim Creation Kit. I'll begin by building a simple exterior. I'll then add a small interior zone, and finally I'll show how an outpost can be connected to the world. The focus here is to show modders how to set up custom spaces with lighting, sound effects, and activators that players and NPCs can explore. Okay, so to get started, actually the first thing we'll do is I'm just going to save this mod. So this is a new mod, and I'm going to just call it Outpost mod and save. So now our work will be saved. Now what we're going to do is head over to the Tamriel world space in our cell window, and we're going to look for Fort Greymoor. So under F, and find Fort Greymoor. Click yes to all the warnings. Now the reason we're going here is because it's going to make it a lot faster to build our own fort, because we can see all of the pieces, all of the different assets that can go together to make forts in the game. So as an example, we have, if you double click on this piece here, we have a wall piece, and you can click on this archway as well. We have this piece which is called wall gate, so it just has a little passageway that you can walk through. And you can see, of course, there are stairs, there are tower pieces as well. The outpost that we're going to build is going to be pretty simple, and we're going to actually build it just over here, almost right next to Fort Greymoor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy some of these pieces. So I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to also highlight a door, because we're going to need a door. And you can highlight objects by holding Control and then selecting them. So I'll show that again. If I wanted to highlight the stairs and the wall piece, I can Control, left click, and I got both of them. That kind of thing. So I'm just going to steal a few pieces here, and you'll see why in a moment that this makes it a little faster to build things. I think that's actually all I want for now. The rest we can find in the object window. So with those pieces highlighted, I'm going to right click and hit duplicate. Or you could have copied as well, I suppose. And then I'm going to drag them over. You can also do cut like this if you want. So you can right click, cut, head over to where you want to build your fort, and then paste. So here I've got some objects that are going to be useful. I'm going to delete this. This marker right here is a creature. So if you double click, it will say LVL, leveled ambient creature. So it's just a general creature, I suppose. Maybe it's a deer. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think it's like a non-hostile animal. So a deer of that, or something like that, or a fox. But I'm just going to delete it. And now I will go ahead and bring this piece over here. So this is going to act as the entranceway. And we'll try to set it up right near the road. So something like this is probably fine. There are a few controls that you need to know about. So if I hold the Z key, you can see the little arrow shows up. So if I hold Z and I drag the object, I can move it up and down. And same thing with X and C. So if I hold X and I drag the object, it'll drag it along this axis. And if I hold C, it'll drag it along this axis. So I guess this gives you some more finer controls of your objects. For now, I'm not going to worry about that. Just going to lower it to make sure that it's touching the ground. When you're building things, all of these objects, they can be sunk into the ground. It just kind of goes underneath the playable terrain. It's not really a big deal. So don't worry about getting it just right. It can be underneath, and it's not going to mess anything up. Okay, the other two controls quickly are these two buttons here. So we have a snap to grid, which is pretty self-explanatory. So if I have two of these objects, I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm using snap to grid, they will actually line up nicely next to each other. Now you'll see there is a bit of a gap. That's actually why I stole this piece, and the way that it seems that the developers handled this in the game is just to stick a piece like this. I think it's called a divider. This piece here, Imperial exterior wall divider. So it seems they've just kind of stuck it in between the wall like that. So that will get rid of your gap. So that's why this piece is here. But if I remove the snap to grid, this is now just a free moving object, and I can line it up however I wish. If I wanted them to be kind of merged with one another like that, I suppose you could do that too. Or you can use your snap to grid button. Now, of course, we also have angle snap, which is the one right next to it. So this will, it looks like it's on a 45-degree setting. So every time you rotate it, it'll just rotate 45 degrees. And then if I turn it off, of course, I can rotate it however I want. So those two buttons are useful when you're doing your modding. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this door over here just so I don't lose track of it. And I'm going to start building some walls and towers to fill out this Imperial fort. And what we'll do is go to our object window, go World Objects, Static. You're going to head to, this will normally be shrunk down, but we're going to find Dungeons and look for Imperial. And it'll open up. So we're going to click on the Imperial heading, and it's going to show us all of the Imperial assets. So there's a lot of things here, and what we are interested in though is wall. So we'll start with a wall piece, and we can just use Imperial Exterior Wall 01. That's fine. Rotate it around a little bit, and we will just adjust our piece here. The controls that you need to worry about for moving the camera are really shift and space. So if I hold shift and drag the mouse, then I'll rotate. If I hold the space bar and drag the mouse, then I'll just move from side to side. And of course you can look at it, your walls and things from different angles. So that looks great. You can always tweak things as much as you want. If you wanted this wall to be lined up in a different way, or if you wanted this ridge to be a little bit lower so that it's not sticking out as much, you can do those things. I would suggest just building out the bulk of your fort first, and then once you've kind of got the general layout, then you can go ahead and start tweaking things. That way, you just save yourself some time in case you want to change something later. Then you end up having to kind of retweak everything and make sure that's all at the right spot. Okay, so that looks great. Now I'm just going to copy this piece. You can copy any piece or any set of pieces by using Control D, so Control Duplicate. And I'm going to copy this piece as well. And very simply, just swing it around. So now I have a bit of a wall here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a tower. You'll notice that whenever you type in an item in the filter box, you'll see there's a whole bunch of towers. There's different kinds of towers. There's different pieces. So as an example, let's head over here and I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about. I'm going to scroll my way over to this fort. Objects will disappear in things when you move out of range of them. It's just the Creation Kit editor. It doesn't really load them. You can see now it's loading things in. It takes some time. The fast way to do it is just to hit F5. So if you hit F5, it's going to refresh the scene and all of your objects are going to load back in. So yeah, if you're moving through, you can see as well, like the grass here is rendered, but on this side it's just really ugly. So it only really loads, just like the game, a certain number of assets at a time. Okay, so here are the towers. Now, some of these towers, I'll drag one out just so you can see. This is a tower, Imperial Exterior Tower 01. You can see it's actually a full model. So there's no doors, you know, you can't really go in, you're not really meant to go inside this object. You can see it's actually hollow, and there's no texture on the bottom. As opposed to a piece like this, where it's actually meant to be accessed by the player. So you can actually walk inside. So they're all kind of the same model, but they're just different versions of it to give the, you know, the player something different to do. All right, so I'm going to put that back because we don't want to mess up anything from this fort. We want to leave it the way it is. So I'm going to head over here, and we're going to use these simple towers for this mod. So I'm going to grab Tower 01, and I'm going to place it. We're going to use 3 towers. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to duplicate this with Control D. I'm going to make sure it's highlighted, and then I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to set up 3 towers. So roughly my fort is going to look something like this. Actually, just make sure that their towers aren't floating. Sometimes they're just sort of hovering above the terrain like this. You want to make sure at least they're underground so it doesn't look weird in the game, of course. And why don't I take a view out here, and I'm just going to spread this out a little bit more. So it's a pretty simple shape. There's a rock in here. I'm just going to delete it for the time being. And the door is going to be over here. Now there is a piece I'm going to grab just quickly. I should have grabbed it before, but that's okay. It's this exterior piece here, just so that the door, you can see how the door doesn't have anything behind it. It's just a texture from the front. So I'm going to grab this piece. There are lots of little hotkeys that you can use when you're using your kit. One of them is just to select an item and press 1. If you press it once, it will kind of turn the object to sort of a half kind of level of transparency. If you press 1 again, it will hide the object entirely. This is useful if you have a lot of objects sort of on your screen at the same time and you're trying to select something that is actually, like for example, if there was something behind this staircase for some reason, but I can't click on it because the staircase is in the way, you can simply hide the object and then click on your whatever it is that you're looking for. To unhide things, you have to use Alt-1, and it's going to unhide everything at the same time. So if I hide all of these objects and I hit Alt-1, it's going to bring them all back. Alright, so I'm going to copy this little doorway area and bring it over here. And paste. And I will line it up with our door. Sometimes doing it by hand without the grid lock or the angle snap is preferable. The objects in your, like, players don't really look at this, they don't spend a whole lot of time looking at doorways and stuff. So if it's not lined up exactly right, like, most of the time no one's really going to notice. Okay, that looks about good. So now we have a doorway. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish building out the walls. Now here's what we can do. I'm going to Control left click, and then I'm going to duplicate and build my walls out like this. Now I'm realizing though it might be simpler just to have this over here. And I'm going to do the same thing, left click, control left click, and duplicate. Bring my wall over. Now I'm going to take all of these and duplicate this as well. Turn off that, and I will put this over here. And the same thing. And so you can see how the wall is really going through the object, the tower here. It's not a big deal. And then I will take all of these pieces, and same thing, put it here, like that. Okay, so there's our fort. Now it's a pretty simple fort. I'm sure you can go over and look at Fort Greymoor. You can see they've added a few more details to theirs. This video is not really going to be about making a super cool fort. It's just going to show you how you can do it. All of the systems that you're going to need to set up in order to get your fort working. And then once you've kind of got that figured out, you can build your fort, have it look however you like. I'm just going to adjust these. Those look good. Okay, great. So why don't we add an interior zone now? So now your fort is built. All of these objects have collision. So obviously as soon as you, they're static objects. So if a player were to run into them, these are actual walls, of course. Okay, great. So now we're going to focus on the interior cell. We're going to have to come back out to do some final work here, and I'll show you how that's done. We have to adjust the Navmesh. So Navmesh is basically like, it shows the NPC characters where that they can walk and where that they can't walk. So right now there's Navmesh running underneath all of these walls, and so if there was an animal or a giant or something that was trying to chase the player, they would run into these walls, and it would sort of appear like they didn't know the wall was there. They would just keep running into it over and over again. So we have to adjust the nav mesh on the ground so that the characters it'll appear like the characters know that the wall is there. Okay, so but we'll do that when we come back. We're going to focus on interior cells. So head over to the cell window, and we were in Tamriel, so of course the open world, and we're going to find instead our interior world space. So this loads up all of the interior world spaces, so dungeons, homes, castles, anywhere you basically go inside in the game, forts, that kind of thing. And we are going to start by looking for a specific cell. We're going to do AAA markers. So I'm not entirely sure what this cell is used for. Of course, you don't want to edit any of the base cells in the game, because then you would be changing things about the game, or changing the pre-existing cells in the game. We want to create a new one. So we're going to go AAA markers, right click, and duplicate cell. You can really do it for any of cells. So if you wanted to, you could right click the Battleborn Farm interior. And I'll double click on it just to show you what it looks like. So here is a interior farm, looks like in Whiterun. So it's just like a house. Now you could duplicate this one. It doesn't really matter. I always do AAA markers. I guess it's just practice now. And when you duplicate it, you're going to get a duplicate cell. It's going to appear right below it, and it'll be clearly labeled as duplicate, so you won't have to worry that you're going to be editing the wrong cell. Now, once we have our duplicated cell, we're going to double click, and it's going to show you on top of the render window that you are indeed in the cell that you have selected. And then we're going to go over to all of our objects. So in cell view, we have interiors, we have all of the interior cells, and once we've selected a cell, you can see the title here. These are all of the objects that are in here. So as I said, I don't really know why what this cell is used for in the game, but it's there and we're not going to mess with the original. So we are going to take all of these objects in our duplicated cell and we're going to highlight and delete them. It's going to ask you if you're sure. That's fine, just delete them. We don't need these. We're not going to use any of this stuff. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our duplicate, we're going to right click and we're going to go edit. Now what this is going to do is going to bring up like the cell data window. So you can see we have common data. You have lots of different options here. Things like lighting, interior data. This is where you can change the name of your cell. Right now it's called marker storage unit. We're going to call this Outpost interior. You can give it an actual name, of course, but we're just going to keep it simple for now. And you can see as well there's a lighting tab, so you can change the lighting template. This controls things like fog, overall ambient light level, different colors of the interior space. And you can see that there's lots of different base examples. You can see there's some for dwarven lighting, green cave, mines, solitude, that kind of thing. You'll see a lot of them have these different words like close or far or medium. What this means is dwarven lighting close is designed for a small dwarven space, and then dwarven lighting far is designed for a very large open space. So think about the dwarven ruins in the game where you've got these huge underground caverns. You'd probably want to select dwarven lighting far. Of course, you can create your own custom lighting templates. Won't do that for now. We're going to stick with the base ones. Number one, because it's really easy. It's just simple. And number two, it's going to match the Skyrim aesthetic, right? So if you want to mod your game and you want it to be very different from the base game, then of course you can create your own lighting templates and change things that way. But if you want to mod something but keep it kind of close to the Skyrim look, then it's really simple to just grab one of their pre-existing lighting templates. So we're going to find something for, there's got to be something for Imperial Fort Close template. Let's go with that. And it's going to fill out all of these things. You can just click OK. And that is going to work for now. So the two things are interior data, change the name. Why don't we just give that a space? And add a lighting template. And then click OK. AAA Outposts. So I should mention as well, because this is a little bit confusing, I changed the interior data, which the name in the interior data tab, to Outpost Interior, but it didn't change the name of the cell as it's listed in the cell view. So the difference is that this name here will appear to the player in the game, and this name here is how the creation kit identifies that cell. And you have to change them independently. And the way you do that is just by clicking on it and pressing F2, and you can change it to, whatever you like. We're going to stick it with Outposts. Okay, so once that's done, we can go ahead and start building our interior zone. And as you can probably imagine, we are going to look at, again, this is actually Fort Greenwall. So before we were looking at a different fort. It doesn't really matter. They're all imperial forts. Often, if you're not sure how to build something, or if you're really a little bit unsure about how the assets fit together, or how things, because when you look at something like, for example, a wall in your object window, you're going to see like, 20 different walls, 30 or 40 different walls. sometimes you have no idea how all of these things are supposed to fit together. The best thing to do is always just look at examples in the base game. So you can see here that there's a stair piece, and you can see how the stair piece connects to, you can see it's pretty tricky to click on things because there's a lot of objects in this render window. But you can see how the stairs connect to this sort of interior tower structure, and you can see how, you know, different walls and things connect to different floor pieces. So yeah, if you're unsure, just copy things. You can, which is exactly what I'm going to do here, and then you can paste them into your own cell. And then once you kind of work with that more, you'll get used to how things fit together. But the main thing we're going to do now is grab a door. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to also check quickly. What is this piece called? So I'm going to hide everything. Oh, that was it. Imperial Tower Base. Okay, so that's what I need. So now we're going to go back to Outpost cell. We're going to paste the door. And then I need to go. I know the object is called base, so I'm going to look for base. Imperial Tower Base 01. That's great. Our door is going to be here. I'm going to find a wall piece. So I don't remember what that's called, so I'm going to go back to our fort. All of these objects that you see, these colored objects, are markers. They're used for different things. What we're going to do is just hit M, and that's going to hide all of those objects. Just toggle off the markers. Now what I need is this door piece here, and I need the wall piece right next to it. So I'm going to copy these as well. Go back to my outposts. Paste this here. So this is a really, really convenient way of building your spaces. It saves you a lot of time. And then I'm going to hide this door for a moment. And then I'm going to line up this thing. Now here's an important thing to know when you're building your outposts. What I could do is duplicate this object and move it around and stick it on somewhere like this. I could do that individually for all of the walls. Okay, these are just wall pieces. But the way the kit works is it's designed to be as helpful to you as you possibly can. So you can see here, when I highlight the tower base, there's a big box that shows up around it, and there's a little access point you can see right in the middle. So as you can imagine, because these pieces are meant to fit together, you don't actually have to adjust anything here. All you have to do is duplicate, hold the right mouse button, and rotate the object. Everything is going to rotate around the axis. And the reason is because you can see how this piece lines up right in the middle. Hopefully, try to get that right in the middle. There you go, right in the middle. And then this piece, hopefully, right in the middle. And then this piece, try to get it right in the middle. So that's how you know that your wall pieces are lined up correctly. So there will be no seams along the floor, and there will be no seams along the ceiling. Okay, and again, it's all just to save you time. So once you've got this set up, you can actually just copy both of these walls or duplicate them with Control D and swing them around, and there's your wall. You can see how easy it is. Sometimes it's a little tricky to control, but you can see how easy it is to build your room. So this is a basic tower. That's all we're going to build for today, but then I'll show you now how you can hook this up into the world. And there's our door. Alrighty. Now, we are going to add our Navmesh. Typically, Navmesh is not something you add until after you've put out all of your clutter, until you've filled out this space with things like tables and chairs and that kind of thing, because you want to Navmesh around the tables so that the characters, don't try to run through the tables and things. So to show that, I'll just put a small table down. Common table. Like this. Why don't we just line it up with the door at least? There we go. Okay. Now we're going to get into our nav meshing. So our nav mesh button is this little triangle thing up here. We're going to click nav mesh, and you're going to get a little bar that appears above your screen. Nav meshing is a little awkward at first, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it. Once you have enabled the nav mesh mode, you're actually not going to be able to select any of the objects on the render window. So you can see I'm clicking on the table, it's not working. I'm clicking on the walls and things, it's not working. So in case you are, you've clicked it by accident and you're trying to move a table or something and it's not working, just double check, make sure you're not in nav mesh mode. You can close nav mesh mode by simply pressing the X along the bar, and then it brings you back to your regular window stuff. So open Navmesh. Now the controls here, we're going to right click to place a vertex, and I will right click another vertex like here. And as you can, if you have the angle snap and the snap to grid on, it's going to make your Navmesh vertexes a little funny. So turn those off. I find it easiest to Navmesh without them, and turn your Navmesh back on. And now you can see you can move your vertices around freely. Navmesh is built in triangles, so I'll show you here. There's our third vertex, and all we have to do is control click all of these vertexes, and we're going to press A once we have all three of them selected. And once you do that, you'll see a triangle appears. So you have to think, with nav meshing, you just have to think triangles. As you can imagine, there are fast ways of nav meshing and there are slow ways of nav meshing. You want to try and nav mesh as quickly as possible. I'll go into the details of nav meshing in a second, but generally you don't want to, for example, create some nav mesh that looks like this. Add an extra dot there. You can delete dots just the same way you delete anything, just by pressing the delete key. Right, so this is going to be very slow if you try to nav mesh this way. It's also a lot of triangles. We don't want all of that. By the way, these can be moved as well, so once you've placed them, they can be moved. Something like this. So that is a one fast way of doing it. Another way you can think about is just try to take an overview or a look at the room that you're going to be nav meshing, or the area, and figure out where you want all of your vertices to go. This is a pretty simple space. Without the table, it's even simpler. But we're going to start by, why don't we start by doing something like this? And it might, sometimes you have a good idea and it really doesn't work, so you have to kind of go back and try something again. But I'm going to add some vertices here. I'm going to add one here. I'm going to add one here. And again, all of these can be moved, so don't worry if they're not perfectly placed just yet. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a vertex on all of these columns. Whoops, okay, that accidentally joined them. I didn't mean to do that. Vertex. Vertex. And so again, nav mesh is important because it shows the characters where they can walk. Without it, sometimes the player character will just kind of fall through the floor when you walk into the space. But otherwise, the NPC characters will just sort of stand in place. they won't be able to move, which obviously is no good. So here I'm just going to try to fill out all of my corners, all of my triangles. I'm just going to go around in a circle. Now I'm actually using a tab button, so you can see here that this corner here and this corner here are highlighted in green. This corner is still red. If I hit the tab button, you can actually cycle which corners you've selected. So it goes from, I guess it's rotating around this one. So these two are selected, and then if I hit tab again, these two are selected. This is useful. It speeds up nav meshing, because say I want to connect these 3 points. If I have these two selected and I hit A, you're going to get a really funny triangle that kind of looks like this, and that's not really what you want, which sort of makes sense. So I'm going to delete those, go here, and connect to those, and I'm going to hit tab to move my dot over. I'm going to connect those, and then I'm going to finish off this one. Now that my nav mesh is complete, I'm going to adjust just so that it looks nice, as neat as I can around the table here. Sometimes when you are nav meshing objects, it's a good idea to kind of give your chairs and tables things a wide berth. In this case, it's pretty close to the table. It's probably not a big deal, but in some cases what you'll notice is that if this corner, or if any of the corners, is a little too close, like this, sometimes NPC characters will run into the corner of the table, and they'll just kind of get stuck on the corner. So just keep that in mind. If you find that happening, just go back and make sure that your nav mesh is a little further away, so that the characters have enough room to kind of go around it rather than running into it. Now when it comes to the super high detail of Navmesh, it's really not super important. For example, there's all this space in here. You could, if you wanted, make some kind of shape like this to fill out these corners. It really is just up to you. But just for your own information, this is sufficient. Okay, you don't have to worry about this being a major problem. In fact, even leaving it the way it is without this extra vertex here is probably fine. But I'll just go ahead and do this anyway. So you don't have to be super crazy about it, but just make sure that it's generally following your floor plan, and that will work very nicely. So now the characters know that they can walk here. I am, however, going to build a very small little shape by the door, and you will see in a second why. Now, there's a couple more things just for the end of nav meshing. This is a very simple nav mesh, so there's not a whole lot to worry about here. But if you had, say you had built a much larger dungeon, let's go ahead and save. For example, let's go take a look at Fort Greenwall again. Now I'm going to hide markers, and then I'm going to turn on the nav mesh. You can see here the nav mesh is slightly more complicated. We have different levels. You can see there's different colors and things. I believe the blue color corresponds to some kind of cover system, so it kind of tells the NPCs where walls are, where they can kind of hide around walls and things. But a regular nav mesh, which is regular triangles, is going to be pretty good for most of your uses. And you can see how you're going upstairs and all this kind of thing. When you do have a more complicated nav mesh, you want to make sure that you don't have any funny triangles in here that are going to mess up with your space. So as an example, I will create one. And by the way, the button I'm using to toggle this visibility of the nav mesh is W. So if you press it once, it will kind of half fade the other objects in the cell. If you press W again, it makes everything disappear. And then just press it a third time to bring it all back. So we're going to hide that for now. Let's say I had a funny triangle. Something, oh, that's a funny triangle. Something like this. This is an odd triangle. There you go. So it's kind of way off in the middle of the space there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to close this for a moment. I'm going to find the Navmesh bar above here. I'm going to go to the bottom, select triangle by index, and I'm going to go check Navmesh. And you're going to get a warning. Pathfinding, Navmesh, blah, 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 blah. Triangle 23 has a down-facing normal. Flip the triangle. It basically means that the triangle is upside down. Yes to all will disable warnings for this context. Found one triangles with high priority warnings. I'm assuming it's going to be this one. Do you want to delete? And then we're going to click yes. So there you go. So it deleted the triangle that was no good. And again, that's going to be useful when you have more complicated spaces. It's less of an issue to worry about when you're building something very simple, but it's important to know nonetheless. Again, so that is Navmesh, select triangle by index, check Navmesh, and then it's going to say, if you're all good, no warnings found. And you can just click OK. Alright, so that's our interior Navmesh. So far in our inside cell, we have set up our lighting. So we have a lighting template. We've set up our interior data. So the name, when we approach the outpost in the game, it's going to say Outpost Interior. Of course, you could change it to, fort, some name, right? It's some random fort, but we're going to keep Outposts Interior. So we have a lighting template, we have a name, and we have our Navmesh complete. I'm also going to add a few extra touches. So this will just kind of get you started with adding some more detail to your interior spaces. So let's start off with a light. So we're going to go World Objects, Lights. This is all of the light sources in the game. So very quickly, to familiarize yourself with them, you have two different kinds of light sources. You have ones, for example, that have an NS right next to them, and you have ones that do not have an NS. So I'm going to drag both of these into our cell. And you can see, actually, if you move them around, that they are casting light. Now this is really cool, because in the editor it allows you to see kind of what your interior spaces will look like. So once you've set up your objects, once you've set up your Navmesh, then you can start looking at lights to try to give your space some kind of cool interior look. You can manipulate these lights in a variety of ways. For example, if you hold the S key, you can change the radius of the light, so you can make it a lot, the light shine a lot further. You can also hold Control Alt S and you can dim the light. So you can make it very bright or you can make it very dim. So for example, you can have a light that only fills a very small space but is very bright. Or you can have a light that fills a very large space which is very dim. Now this light is actually kind of in the way, so it was also casting here. So we're going to move that. But you can see how that can have an effect on how the space is going to look. By the way, all of these lights, they are, because of course these markers are not visible in the game, they are toggleable using the M key. So if you drag a light into your cell and you can't see it, just click M and it'll appear. However, going back to the difference between these two lights. So here is the box for this light, and here is the box for this light. Let's just move that here. So this one on the left, it's just called Bleak Falls Torchlight 01, and it has the purple cross in the middle. Oh, this window got hidden. This one on the right is called Bleak Falls Torchlight 01 NS. So the NS stands for no shadow. What that means is that this light source, we're going to move this out of the way just for a second. This light source is going to cast its light through the objects in the cell. So you can see how there's a table, and there's actually no shadow coming off of the table. If we swap, and that's because the light is like going right through it. It's almost like the object's not even there. If we drag in our shadow caster, and actually this light is so darn bright, it's contaminating this light source. Okay, we're just going to bring it up. We're going to increase the radius there. You can see how now there's a shadow. And if I move the object around, the shadow is going to move pretty much exactly how you would expect. Now the only rule that you kind of have to remember here between shadow casters with the purple cross and non-shadow casters is that you can only have a limit of 4 shadow casters in any interior cell. So that's this whole cell. So if I built an entire dungeon, I can only have 4 of these purple guys in here at a time. If you have more than 4, you might be able to get away with it, but it's likely that you're going to run into some issues. This is just a limit of Skyrim. That's just how it works. You can't have more than 4. With these non-shadow casters, you can kind of have as many as you want. However, in my own experience, I have noticed that why is this not moving here? Oh, there we go. I have noticed, for example, if you tried to light a room like this with all of these different light sources, sometimes funky things do happen. The light kind of goes glitchy in the game. So try to keep your usage of lights to a minimum, and just kind of, use your best judgment, but sometimes too many lights might cause you problems. However, I do like this light exactly where it is because it's giving a nice sort of shadow effect off of the table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there. You can see, of course, in this example, I'm using a light from Bleak Falls Barrow. It doesn't really matter. There are some Imperial lights, I'm sure. Or maybe, are they called Fort? What are they called? Okay, okay. So there's some Helgen lights. Yeah, you can peruse through the list and find things. They're usually named pretty clearly, and you can figure out where these light sources come from. But this is fine. We'll stick with this one for now. So I'm just going to quickly add. Let's try candle. And I'm going to look for world objects, static, Imperial candelabra. There you go. That looks good enough. And we're going to stick it right there. Perhaps maybe we'll move this. Something like that. Yeah, it looks interesting. Okay, so now we have our light and we have a light source, which will make it look kind of cool. Go ahead and save. There we go. Okay, so, this door, you can actually see there's a seam, a small seam, so maybe it has to be adjusted. There you go. Okay, so that's basically the interior cell setup. So now what we have to do is connect our interior zone to our exterior zone. And the way we're going to do that is by our door. So all of the doors in the game, if you double click on them, you'll see a list of tabs along the top. They have a teleport tab, and this is how you can connect doors to other doors. So we're going to double click, find teleport, click the teleport box, and now it's important that you drag this window over your object window. If you leave it here, it's actually going to disappear. As soon as you click on something else, like it's going to it's going to disappear behind the render window, and it's a pain. Oh, it actually closed, I think. Or where is it now? It disappeared behind all the other windows. So it's still there, but it's just a bit of a pain. I'm going to readjust this. So make sure you drag it over to your object window. That will make it easy for you. Now what we're going to do, we're going to head back to our exterior cell. So we're going to go back to Tamriel. We're going to find this list. By the way, it scrolls very quickly, so sometimes it's tricky. We're going to find Fort Green Wall, and we're going to go back to, oh, this is not, sorry, not Greenwall, Fort Greymoor. And we're going to go back to our custom fort. So it's just kind of over here to the left. Or to the right, I should say. And I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to turn the skylight on. It's much brighter. It's a lot easier to see. And then we're going to scroll over to our door on the exterior. So once we're going to go back to our box here, we're going to click select linked door, select reference in render window. You can see here how the kit is smart enough to know that if I'm trying to select a reference as an example, what's going on here? As an example, this archway, it's not going to work. So the cross is in red. But as soon as I go over to the door, you can see here, now it's saying you can select it. So we're going to double click, and it's going to fill out some of these spaces. And then you can, like the cell, so where this door is located, and then the actual reference itself. So which door is this? And you can just click OK. Now once you've done that, it's going to look like nothing happened. You have to press your M key so that your markers will appear again. And rotate this around now. Like this. So the little arrow on the end of this marker key basically says that's the direction that the player is going to be facing after they've exited through this door. Now the neat thing is, so yeah, if you stick it like this, the player, when they try to leave the interior zone, they're going to be facing the wrong direction. So just make sure it's facing the right way. The neat thing about this is that if you double click your door marker, it's going to allow you to jump to the interior cell that is connected to this door. So I'm going to click yes, and you see it jumps me right back to my interior cell. So that's a really convenient way of moving between your interior and exterior cells. So again, this door marker has to be adjusted because you want the player to be facing the right direction when they come inside. There you go. So now, as I mentioned, there was one last thing we have to do on the outside, which is adjust our Navmesh. So let's go save, and here we go. Now, the reason we did interior nav meshing first is because it's a lot easier. There are fewer things you have to worry about. Let's try to explain this. So you can see how this is the entire nav mesh for the exterior world. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, somebody at Bethesda, or a group of people, actually had to nav mesh the entire world. That sucks, so I feel bad for them. But they did it. So the way that it works is you can see you have nav meshing, just as it looks like in the interior cell. The difference, though, is that we have these green lines sort of cutting up the world into all these squares. These are the exterior cells. And the reason this is important is because you can't actually connect vertices through different cells. So all of your vertexes in one cell have to be in that cell. You have to sort of, once you've created your nav mesh, you then have to go back and you have to stitch together your cells just so that you can form your lines up again. That sounds kind of complicated, but we will work through it. So unfortunately, as you can see, there's a cell border that runs directly through our fort, which is not ideal, but we will manage. There's a space here actually. If you guys remember, there was actually a rock here that I deleted, so that's why there's a space here. Okay, so we have to adjust this nav mesh so that it follows these walls. The interior, we can kind of leave it as it is, that's fine, but we just have to adjust the outside. So let's hope this looks a lot worse than it is, although it does look kind of inconvenient. All right. What helps as well is to sometimes turn off the sky, the skylight. When you're nav meshing, it helps to make these triangles a little bit easier to see. Okay, so why don't we start at this corner? And I'm going to delete a triangle. And I'm going to try to, actually going to delete this triangle. Adjust this nav mesh. You can always grab these corners and drag them around. Something like this. And you can add corners onto the sides of your triangles like this. And you slowly work your way around the space. Just like this. Unfortunately, it does take some time. Alright, so that looks like that's most of it. There's one more piece we have to add here. And we're just going to connect this archway. Underneath here, so that we can run underneath the archway. So we're going to select here, 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 add our triangle, add our triangle. Now we have a pathway inside. So if you hit W, you should see a rough kind of outline of the shape of your fort. We have the 3 towers, and we have our interior courtyard with a little pathway inside. So this is the idea. Now, all these green lines need to be, as I mentioned before, they need to be stitched together afterward. The way that you do that is you got to go all the way in, and you have to actually line up these vertices. So you can see where the green line is. If I try to drag this vertices here across this cell border, you can see it's like I'm running into a wall. This is where the cell ends, so I can't actually bring the vertices further. So what I have to do is line it up as best I can with the corresponding vertex from the other cell. And this, sometimes it can be confusing, but this vertex is on the other side of the cell, so now it can't go this way. So I have to line them up like this. And I have to do that, unfortunately, for all of them. There we go. Nav meshing in exteriors is really not ideal. Now you know what I mean by someone had to nav mesh the entire world by hand, or a group of people. That must have been a lot of work. Okay, so if all your vertexes are lined up and they look pretty good, then what you have to do is finalize your world space, the nav mesh of this cell. And you do that by finding the little check mark on your nav mesh bar. And that's what's actually going to stitch them all together. So I'm going to click the check mark. It's going to do its thing. And you can see here that some of those green lines, for example, have disappeared. That just means that your vertexes weren't lined up properly. So I have to go back here and just readjust these things. You can see here, yeah, they're a little bit spaced apart. I'm going to line you up. And I'm going to line you up. Like so. Oh, that's not lined up. Like so. And then we're going to try it again. So now I'm going to hit this button again. And you can see now my green lines have come back. So that's Navmeshing exterior zones. Now, I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back inside. And I'm actually going to open my Navmesh one more time. And I'm going to finalize. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to bring up a little green triangle. And this triangle corresponds with the door marker. So now that there's a teleport door marker, it's going to signal to all NPCs that this door is usable. So not only now can they walk around through the interior space, and they will, oh, you know what we should do to be proper? This is why I say you should do the Navmesh last. Because then you end up having to redo things. But we're just going to cut out this floor chandelier. So now the NPCs will walk around the chandelier, they'll walk around the table, and they can also use the door. So that's an important step. There you go. Perfect. And then we'll do the same thing on the exterior. Open our Navmesh. Finalize. And there is our nice green triangle. It's actually a huge green triangle. I don't think it really matters, but that's fine. Close and save. Okay, there was one quick thing I just forgot. If you were wondering about the sound, we're going to go back to our edit, Outposts, and we're going to find our common data default acoustic space, and we'll just find something that matches with the Imperial Legion. Let's call it Interior Dungeon Fort Acoustic Space. Why not? Let's go with that. And music type, I believe this is the combat music. You can just do, well, you can leave it as default actually for now. It's probably fine. And then hit OK. And then save. So that's basically how you set up a fort. Of course, you can kind of design this thing to your heart's desire. You can add multi-leveled, multi-layered interior zones, but these are really the steps that you're going to need in order to make it really just kind of hook up to the open world in the same way that the regular dungeons do. So get used to that, and then once you kind of have those tricks figured out, you'll be able to design your own intricate forts and that kind of thing. And of course, the last thing we'll do, we'll head into the game and check out the fort for ourselves. Okay, here we are, and here is our nice, beautiful Imperial fort. Of course, it could use some nice decorations. We could put some flags there. We might want to add some, general stuff onto the inside. So flags on the walls, maybe some stairs. We could hollow out some of these towers so that the player could go inside of them, explore them, that kind of thing. Here's our courtyard. It might be nice to put a well somewhere here. And again, add some stairs up so that our fort has some kind of vertical levels to it. You could do all sorts of things. And now we are going to head into our interior zone, our outpost interior. And here we have our nice light candle. And hopefully we set it up just right and there's no seams and everything in the walls. And it looks great. So this is a fully functioning outpost. You could have characters, you could create custom characters, quests. and then you could set some kind of AI package that would tell a character to travel to this location. So they would be able to walk into the archway, go inside. They could activate doors. If you had any levers or anything in there, you could tell them to pull levers and do all sorts of things. So this is really the beginning. There's lots of different things you can add to this, but that's how you get yourself started. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.